Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually quite a simple proposition. And it's quite clear that what our opponents are recommending is something which Americans shiver at, which is experimentation without the consent of the individual being experimented upon. It's worth looking very briefly at American history. The history of eugenics, which started probably in Britain with Francis Galton back in the 1850s, is still a scar to some extent on genetics. And Davenport, of course, and other people who followed him, I think, had a great deal of responsibility for the sterilization of women without consent, with the prevention of people who might want to make love together because they are different races were prevented by law in many states in the United States. And this is something, of course, which directly influenced the Nazi Holocaust. And although it may seem far-fetched, it's worth bearing in mind that at a time when the planet is oppressed by the risk of global warming, by the risk of conflict, by the risk of all sorts of serious issues on the economy, it may well be that people might want to see eugenics raising its ugly head again. And the United States, in my view, as the leading biotechnological country in the world, has a major responsibility to lead it in this ethical issue. Now, as my partner has said, there are two concerns here. One is genetic engineering to change horrific genes, such as Nisa mentioned, and the other, of course, is to enhance individuals. The problem, of course, is that once you go from one, I think you go to the other as well. And mitochondrial disease, let's just knock that on the head straight away. Mitochondrial disease, although it's a terrible thing to have, it is really trivial in terms of its incidence. It's a very, very uncommon disorder. And it is worrying to me that our opponents have got the numbers wrong. It isn't 2% of the DNA. It's 16,000 base pairs out of 3 billion base pairs. So it's a tiny amount of DNA. But we know already that even fiddling with the mitochondria may make a massive difference to what happens to the nuclear DNA. It's still not clear. And it's worth bearing in mind that abnormal children have been born as a result of mitochondrial transfer. This has been completely unpredictable. Now, with regard to one of the issues about genetic engineering for enhancement, it would be permanent, it would be irreversible, and it may impart values to a child that that child might find is not valuable in the society in which they are growing up. And of course, with regard to disease, it is quite clear that screening embryos is a much better bet. If we take a cell away